But thank you so much, Greta, that you are able to join us. I hope that you didn't have to wake up too early and, it's not a very inconvenient time for you.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's good to get up earlier.
So, Greta, what I wanted to begin with, obviously, like your journey is something which is, you've done a lot in just about maybe a span of 12 to 13 years. I mean, when I looked at your filmography and I was like, wow, I mean, how did you even, manage to do so much? But before that, I also want to understand, who are your inspirations in filmmaking? Who are the people you look up to?
I'm thinking a lot about that. I mean, there's a lot of different people. I mean, I always go back to Kieslowski as a pretty big inspiration from his approach to filmmaking and attention to detail, because that's something that I find so important. It's like every tiny detail matters and means something. So that filmmaker's been a big influence. I know it's a tough one because there's so many. It's like there's default ones that have just been there forever. Like Largos Lathamos is another one that just love the way that he kind of challenges cinema and his writing. And then cinematographers like Agnes Goddard is a huge influence. Claire Denis also, their collaboration. I don't know, Mandy Walker's another one. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to like put it to a couple people because it's just, I just love cinema. I've loved it since I was a little kid. So it's just always, everything's been influential to me, really.
I mean, you, in a way, did start your film education at an early age. Was it something like 15 or something? I read somewhere that
sort of, yeah. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and they had a film program. It's actually a pretty cool nonprofit film program, and I did like pre-college courses there. And it was like we did Super 8 and still photography. It was like a 1 day a week class. And then when I was 15, it was a NIFA class at Princeton. And that was really just to figure out if I wanted to go to school for it or even if I liked film and like working on set, because I didn't really understand what that meant. I loved movies and I made films with my sister, but, I didn't really understand it beyond that. So the course was just helpful for me because I knew that's what I wanted to do. Like it was simple. Like that was all I needed was to be in like, in a program with 20 other kids and making these projects that we just come up with, because that was basically the program. Is everyone comes up with projects and then we help each other make it over I think it was 2 weeks. And that collaboration and just the amount of passion that went into it, and this is on a level that we don't even know what we're doing. We just love movies, and so that was enough for me to pursue a school, a college, which was only really because I didn't know any other way to get into it. I grew up in a small town, so the idea of moving to a city without some kind of college or something to like ground me, like, give me a place and a direction was really terrifying, and I didn't know how to do that. So I went to School of Visual Arts in Manhattan because New York just seemed like the right place. I didn't really know why at the time either, but it just seemed like the movies that I was interested in, maybe it was like a fascination with some films that I'd seen kind of romanticize New York, whatever it was, it kind of drew me there. And so I just picked a school that was in New York. and that was kind of that's how I started.
Right. And then you have worked in all sorts of, cinematography departments.
Mhm.
That's something, I mean, you have done what, somewhere around 55 projects in some, as a grip or as a gaffer or as a first assistant or, uh, I mean, everything. I think you've done it all. So how did you decide to, go that way, that you will do everything?
uh, just trying to figure out a path, I think. Um, Gripping kind of came from that just ended up being the first opportunity that I had, I think, because I was still in school, I was still studying, and um, and I had met some friends like on thesis projects, and that's kind of like I learned I wanted to learn lighting is basically how it started. So I was kind of surrounding myself with people who were working in the industry and students who were grips and gaffers and had like worked on some movies, and so I kind of decided to take that route because I knew I liked camera, but I didn't know anything about lighting, and then that kind of felt like the only way to learn. Um, and then when I started doing it, it didn't like I did a couple features, some small independent features as a grip. Um, and I liked it a lot. It was really fun and it's challenging. It's like creative problem solving all the time.
Right.
Um, but it didn't quite feel like the right path to moving towards being a DP. Um, and also the position that I was as a grip, I was never really that close to the DP. So like learning specifically from the DP just felt like so far from reality. So I transitioned into camera because it was something I was interested in, um, and kind of found my way that way. And I think I hadn't like really climbed that far as a grip yet to for it to be like super daunting to like start over.
Right.
Um, and it was just very fortunate to meet some really great filmmakers while transitioning to camera, and then just kind of did it the traditional way. Like I um, started as a loader and kind of worked my way up, and had no idea if I'd be a good first or not, but just kind of pursued it and tried it and liked it, and it was a good way for me to kind of learn under TPs, um, and uh, and kind of like figure out what kind of DP I wanted to be and like how to like move forward, I guess. Um, but
So, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. All of those projects just happened. Like it was just like taking, as a technician, it was just kind of taking everything that came my way. Um, I think there was one year where I did like four features back to back. I just, it was just, I still picked projects that I liked. I was still a little bit picky, but it was just like I didn't really care about like anything else. That was just what I did. So if there was another project, I was going to jump on it. I didn't need to have like something in between because my life, that's all that I cared about. Um, so it's kind of how
Right.
I like, yeah.
So who are the DPs who influenced you the most when you were working as a first, or even
Um,
in other roles?
yeah. Trying to think. Sorry. Um, I worked with Jody Lee Lipes on a few projects. Him and Joe Anderson, who I met at the same time, because it was before Joe had transitioned to being a DP himself. Um, they're very influential for me. Just because I met them kind of right at the beginning, and immediately I loved Jody's work and kind of his approach to filmmaking, in general. So I watched him pretty closely, um, and he was great in bringing me on to more than a couple projects. Um,
Right.
and then Chase Irvin. is another. We did a feature together, two features together. One that I first did that I learned so much on that shoot because it was the first time I first did on like a film camera, um, as like the only, like that was, I had done it before, but not on a whole feature, and that that was like a huge step in my progression of just understanding um, light in a totally different way because he's very good at using natural light and shaping it in a certain way for this film in particular, and also had this like very interesting way to be able to almost shoot in a documentary style, but the framing didn't feel that way. It felt very purposeful and composed. It was like this
Right.
kind of incredible way to just like slam down the camera and find the exact right frame for the scene, but almost do it instantaneously, like as if we were shooting a documentary. Because there was a lot of kids and things that we couldn't really control, so we had to approach it that way. But just watching that process was very inspiring, just to see someone's mind work that quickly, and still be able to create something that's so beautifully composed. So those are probably the most influential. Um,
I mean, your documentary, which is called Day Fight,
mhm.
that also has that element, of from. I mean, caught a glimpse of the trailer, but it felt so different from documentaries how we are used to see
Yeah.
them being shot. So I think that line is kind of blurring a bit between how fiction may look and how a documentary looks. I mean, documentaries are also, I mean, more and more, there are so many beautiful documentaries which are out there, and yours is, something that also appears from the trailer definitely like that. I mean, can you share a bit on how you went about shooting Day Fight?
I knew the director from a while back, Andrew Renzi, and it's always tough with documentaries because I think he had reached out to me many months before about it, and I was potentially on something else at the time. But I've always wanted to work with him, and especially in documentary. Um, but I shared the movie with another DP, Sean Green, who did. Um, we kind of split the movie. There's a couple other DPs on it as well, uh, but yeah, that's kind of how I found it. Because I knew him from kind of more narrative. He's done some narrative work as well, so we met on a project many years before that. Um,
Right.
but as far as the style, I mean that is very much Renzi. Um, 'Cause that's his kind of ideal approach to documentary. He loves narrative storytelling, but like he likes the process of narrative storytelling, but finds a lot more fulfillment and purpose with documentaries. So it's
Right.
kind of his way of combining the two is that there's no reason not to uh, kind of do that similar thing. It's like create this like cinematic story through documentary storytelling. Um,
Right.
yeah, so it's kind of that collaboration with him figuring out how to do that.
What was it shot on? I mean,
Um, it was Alexa Mini, two Alexa Minis, and Hawk Anamorphic,
right.
which is
Okay.
yeah, which is like the it like kind of. I mean, we had a lot of gear, and that was a tricky thing. It was like, how do you have these cameras and this gear that is a little bit cumbersome, but still be able to stay mobile and not compromise the story, and that was probably the challenge.
Right.
But yeah.
So how did you manage that? How did
Um,
you
I,
how did
I,
you manage to remain fluid with all that gear, and because also documentaries do not allow that kind of time, oftentimes, to be able to frame, and you have to be like
yeah,
you were mentioning about how somebody can think so quickly. I think in documentaries you have to think even more quickly,
oh yeah,
because
definitely.
you never know which moment is like really exciting, and you just have to like capture it. So
Hmm.
how did you manage it during?
Yeah, I was that was the challenge because we didn't really have more time. I mean, that story in particular, the only thing that maybe it was slightly different is that Andrew, he also, like any project he takes on, he is very, very, very invested in, personally as well. And the kids who were in it, Quincy and Peanut, um, and there were a couple others in there as well. I mean, he spent so much time with them, like whether they were filming or not filming. So I think that it was the amount of access that we had that helped. Um, and we were
Right.
able to just kind of be with them a lot and follow them around. So I think that helped because it wasn't like we just had a few tiny windows with them. Um, we like we took them to a big event, a big boxing event, and we were able to, be in the van with them the whole time. So there was ways to like set the camera up and be able to like
Right.
um so that's maybe partially it. But yeah, I don't know if there was like a perfect formula of how we did it. It was just kind of like figuring it out every time.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, also because I think a lot of things just happen in the spur of the moment. And like you said, if you have access to your characters,
Hmm.
in a decent amount of time, and you have spent a lot of time with them, then that also helps. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
and we were familiar with the area, so it's kind of, just like you would scout for a movie. It's like we knew the neighborhoods, we knew the places we wanted to film, um, kind of these connective, more like B-roll kind of shots, and then the access
right.
to the kids. So it was, that combination, and like the boxing gym as well. He had an incredible amount of access there. So, you can shape the story pretty precisely there as well. So, it's like you have all those elements, and then kind of the in-betweens might be a little bit less controlled, but they kind of fit, like once you know kind of the visual uh, language, then you can just kind of, keep achieving that. The You haven't seen the film, right? Or you've just seen
No,
the
it's
trailer?
not. It's not available here,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately. Yeah. So,
Um, there's the big boxing tournament at the end of the film was we ended up covering it with 5 cameras, and that was like it again, it's because we kind of had planned access to the stadium. We were able to kind of formulate a plan of how we wanted to film it, and we wanted to try to capture it as close to a real boxing match as possible.
right.
um so that again just adds like another, like each boxing tournament adds another cinematic value to the film because we were able to plan, because it was a planned event. um
So,
yeah.
Jody has just joined the session. I just saw that he has, and you mentioned
Okay.
that. Yeah, so he's here. I got a couple of questions while we were talking, and I think someone, after listening to your journey and being inspired by everything that you've done and how you took on to cinematography or being the DP eventually. The question is that, what's your take on learning cinematography from film schools? vis-a-vis how you did it?
Um, I don't know that I don't know that I learned a ton of cinematography from school. I learned that was the direction that I wanted to go in. And I studied cinematography technically at school, but I don't think I really understood what I wanted to do as a storyteller and as a cinematographer until I started working on set and really like meeting directors and meeting those people. Um, I think school helped me understand kind of how to approach working on sets because it's a very hands-on school, so they taught a lot about um, kind of the practicalities of set. So it kind of like gave me the confidence to do that. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say that there's anything specific from school itself that that helped me figure that
Right.
out. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
It's
yes, go
yeah,
ahead.
it was probably it was like actually making films with other students and figuring it out kind of on our not on our own, but in a sense like, you know, we go out and I did two thesis movies in Mexico and we were very much on our own and just kind of, you know, figuring it out on our own. So school definitely gives you that freedom to
Hmm.
experiment. Um, so in that sense, it's it helps kind of figure out uh, experiment, kind of trial and error in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, having gone to a film school myself, I think film school, like you said, does prep you for, give you, or maybe guide you in terms of how you can approach your work. But a lot of the practical aspects of filmmaking, you know, you get to learn when you are on the job.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot of that also comes from being on the set. So I think if one can get both the experiences, nothing like it. I mean, I think film school also gives some kind of a basis to, especially a person who probably might have never had any experience or anything to do with filmmaking or any kind of artistic, let's say even photography for that matter. So I think that way, true.
Yeah.
Um, there's another thing that you mentioned that on the documentary there were three DPs that you two other DPs that you work with. Now,
Hmm.
even in your other film, which for which you won the best cinematography,
Right.
Materna, is that how?
Hmm. Yeah.
Am I saying it right? Yeah. So how is the experience of, you know, working with other DPs on a project and still getting
Yeah. Um, it's it was definitely unique. Uh, we I wouldn't say, you know, if I were to do it again with a couple of different DPs, I think the approach probably would be slightly different. But in this, for this particular film, we were very separate. Um, there wasn't necessarily a collaboration. The connective like collaboration was with the director,
right?
because each DP who, so they the stories, the elements of the film that they did were each story because the film itself is kind of it's not broken up. It's one continuous film, coherent story, but the characters in it are filmed in a way that they are separate. Um, so so one of the DPs filmed one character, another filmed another character, and then I ended up filming a couple other ones. And the director originally wanted to do that because I think he wanted he had a couple different production designers on it as well, and
Right.
um, and he wanted kind of these personal touches from specific DPs and design for each story. and it was originally it was four different stories and what's going to be four different DPs. So it was really going to be like a unique touch to each story. Um, but I ended up uh, getting on board with the director for three of them, or for two plus this other story that kind of connects all the other stories.
Right.
So the collaboration with the other DPs wasn't was maybe like in color, like in finishing the film. We kind of came up with that together, and we had an amazing colorist who really combined and was able to come up with a continuity with all the films. So we definitely came up with that together. But yeah, it was definitely a different experience. Um,
Right.
yeah. But I would say the continuity was really through the director because he was the only one that was really kind of pulling us all together.
Right. I mean, your choices of films are very interesting. I mean, right from your short films, even, and every film has a very distinct look. Of course, I mean, it goes with the narrative and the director that you're working with, but still, there's an element of I still felt while watching the film that I'm watching a film that is shot by you, because there's some signature that is always there, like be it your short film like a Friday, which was shot quite a while back, or and then there was another one was Impeccable. I'm getting forgetting the name of it. Uh, Network or Connect.
Uh,
1 second.
is it a short film?
Yeah,
Immaculate, maybe?
yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
Immaculate. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So even that has a very distinct look. And then, your films have been going to the festivals and you're quite a regular at Sundance and TIFF. So share some of your experience with that, with such a long journey of all these interesting films and getting
Oh,
recognized. I think you were, even in 2014, you were recognized as one of the rising cinematographers at
yeah,
Sundance.
that was for Immaculate. Um, uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's such a giant question. Um, I don't.
I'll break it up.
Yeah,
I'll break
where
it
to
up
start with
into
that?
um, how has your experience been in all these festivals? Whenever you've gotten the amazing responses for your amazing films.
Um, the festivals are great for for being able to connect with other filmmakers for sure. I mean, that's definitely been probably the most um like most inspiring part of film or of festivals. Um,
Right.
I mean, definitely opportunity has arisen from it for sure. Um, but yeah. Um, I guess it's like what is it more like what like how has it been beneficial or just kind of my take
Yeah.
on festivals or
Yeah. I mean, because you've been there
hmm
quite of quite often times. So how has it benefited you, and what was your learnings, if at all, if there were learnings that you had in these festivals?
yeah. I mean, exposure for film is definitely huge. Um,
Right.
the first couple features that I had that went to Sundance, um, they were very, very tiny movies, and their only life is really through festivals. Um, I
Right.
mean, beyond, Sundance is a great festival because of the amount of exposure, but also films usually sell at Sundance, so it's an opportunity for them to have a second life. Um, so in that sense, um, having films at festivals is hugely beneficial for that. And for cinematographer, I mean, it is somewhat recognition. Going to a film festival definitely helped me um, get further work. It helped me get an agent, and natural exposure. It's just
Right.
my name actually being, somewhere that people can see or recognize somewhere. I think with Immaculate, I ended up with this like tiny article that was kind of speaking to shooting films on film, and that was my very first project at a film festival, and a couple other DPs who were in that article had been working for a while, so we did that, and that was like a I think ICG article or something. So yeah, I mean, definitely opens the door for opportunities and exposure, definitely.
Right.
Um,
And now, when you look back to your journey from being in the being in various departments of the camera and electrical, and then going through the film festivals, and now your film, the half of it is on Netflix, and it also won the best feature at Tribeca
mhm.
this year.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Oh,
So
thank you.
how does it feel having come from? I mean, when you look back at your journey, what do you take from it?
Oh man. uh, I mean, for me, I don't even know. I just, you know, I love, I love this industry so much. Um, I love doing what I do. That to me, it's just like, I just feel lucky that I feel fortunate that I'm able to keep doing it and to keep finding projects. And I mean, the journey of just meeting all of these different filmmakers and being able to collaborate and tell these stories has really been the most rewarding thing to me. Um, the other things definitely help in kind of propelling um, the work and helping, find more work and find more collaborations. But it's really the journey of making the films that I've gotten the most out of. Um, and just those relationships, the relationships that you get on set with your crew and just that collaboration. That's the most rewarding aspect of all of this to me. I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's like
No,
that's
it
yeah.
it does. I also, because there was one question about which was pretty much touching up on the same thing. I have to just scroll up to see that question again. It was to do with it's from another cinematographer in our group, Damini. Her question is that what were the difficulties you faced in your journey of becoming a cinematographer? And I think um, my question was also kind of trying to touch upon the same thing, that when you look back at your journey from where you started to where you are, what are the things that you think that came probably as a difficulty and then you overcame them in a way, and then you know uh, risen ahead, basically. That's something that I was trying to get to.
Yeah. Let me think. Uh, Definitely. I mean, like the going from transitioning out of a scene was really scary. Um, I don't know if that's necessarily like a difficulty, but it was a challenge because I had at least been able to work as an AC long enough to join the union, and have, enough work that I felt comfortable. And I think that's always something that can happen where it's I know uh, career ACs who are absolutely brilliant and career gaffers, and that's really what they want to do. That's their goal. And if it's not your goal, and it is a transition, for me it was kind of like, I don't want to go, like, how far do I take this before I transition over to DP, or even if that's even possible, or when could that happen? So making that leap, uh, just on the basis of shooting a couple short films, I had no security as a DP whatsoever. It was still just a passion. It's just still something I wanted to do. And my only way of kind of figuring out how to do that was just doing it. I stayed working as an AC for a little while. But I basically, went to the DPs that I worked with, and I was like, I have to stop. And it's very scary, but I'm just going to do it. So I just stopped ACing to just pursue cinematography, and so going from short films to a feature, that was maybe the trickiest part, was just like trying to figure out the right project. Because in the beginning it was just kind of like reading everything that came, which wasn't very many projects, like features, and wanting to take everything, but even then it was like, I wasn't getting them. I didn't have anything in my resume to like get me there, and so when I finally found the right project, I think that was just that period of trying to figure out how to navigate being a DP professionally was probably the most challenging,
Right.
and scary. But yeah, I yeah, I guess that moment in time.
Right. Also, when you are, when you are the first AC, you, get to work in a lot bigger projects. And then when you have to transition, probably you have to start with something not so big. And was that also something which was challenging for you when you were transitioning?
Mm, I actually didn't work on really big projects as an AC. I still worked on a lot of indie features that were bigger than the features that I started on, for sure, but they were kind of in the same language. Um, and but the union show that I worked on was a TV show, which was just a different, um, it's totally different in general. But it didn't feel like, I never progressed, I guess, far enough as an AC in that world, like on big movies, that I felt like I wouldn't be able to make a transition to working on indies again or whatever. Like, I never left that world,
Right.
because I love it so much. Like, I love passion projects. I
Right.
love what comes with that, from all collaborations. It's just really great. So I don't that was never a thing. It was just more knowing that once I let go of one part of like my progression, I couldn't go back. Even if
Right.
people called me, even if an opportunity arose, I couldn't go back, because if I did, I wasn't committing. I wasn't committing to that transition, and I didn't know if I was ready for it either. It was just going on a little bit of momentum, with a short film, and that was, I had to take that opportunity. Otherwise, I was just going to wait and keep waiting,
Right.
and yeah. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, that transition wasn't really a factor.
Right. And your choices of film are, something which which are very inspiring for anyone who, who's looking at narrative, or to be part of good narrative. I think, you've managed to strike quite a good balance there. And also, like, when it comes to what you mentioned about you thinking that you just had to do it, I think that's also quite evident from all the work that you've done, like being part of some 90 odd projects between your DP projects and your other, camera and electrical department projects. I think that's quite a lot. And I think a lot of us here who are, watching today can take a lot of inspiration from there. And I think what you said, I mean, the transition could be hard, but at some point, if you really want to do that, if you do want to become a DP, at some point you have to take that tough call and, lead the projects that may seem lucrative, but are probably not going to help, or are probably going to stall you from, becoming a DP. So I think a lot of us can actually take inspiration from there as well. There's a question that just come in. So the half of it is a major favorite of a lot of viewers here, and luckily it's available on Netflix here as well. So quite a lot of you have seen it. And Smita, one of our DPs from the group, she had approached you the first time. She is in awe of the film, and so am I. I don't know if we have like enough time to touch upon all the questions, but first question is, what was it shot on?
We went the route of LF for the 4K, and that's kind of most of the digital projects I've done have been on Alexa, so that transition was really easy. And then lenses were Leica R's.
Right.
And I think we in a ingenue 12:1 for some shots.
Okay. And there are a few questions that I've already received for the film, so I'm just gonna go through there. Okay. Yes, your collaboration with your colorist on every project in general, like how do you approach it? And then specifically with Sophie in this film, how has it been?
Yeah, definitely the way I approach it now. I can't speak to some of the first projects and some short films as well. But more recently, I find that getting colorist on board to the project as early as possible is the best way. I usually like for Light from Light, and I'll come back to Sophie, but for that film, there are a lot of very specific references to color and texture, and we had like references some paintings, and there were just very, very specific color tones to these paintings so I immediately went to the colorist and was just kind of like, how can we create this? I don't want to manipulate the image necessarily, but like, how can we kind of find a way to get close to this on some level? And that was in pre-pro. So we figured that out, and he created a couple of LUTs, and then I tested them on the camera test day and decided on a specific one that felt right, and what we had talked about. And so for the half of it, we did something similar. I went to Sophie with some references, and some color palette ideas, and just kind of like, this is overall like what we're looking for tonally for the film, and she came up with this beautiful LUT that we stayed pretty true to all the way to the end of the film. But yeah, so had her in before the camera test as well, tested the LUT on the camera test, and then and kind of used that as the show LUT for the film.
So basically, for you, it's to bring the colors as early as possible.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important to have them in prep. Um,
Right.
I've done projects before, and most of the short films just because of just there wasn't a way to do that. And it's, you know, there's a couple of different reasons why, but one reason is what you end up looking at on set, and more importantly, like what the director ends up looking at while they're editing. They can get very, very used to that.
Right. Yeah.
And unlike film, where it's like everyone's very aware of what they're looking at isn't the final look of the film. Even with dailies, you can create the look of the film, and that's the film. So I think it's really important to establish that as early as possible, if not right away. Ideally right away, so that when you get into color, anywhere from a few months to half a year later, those ideas of what the film is supposed to look like stays the same, stays true.
Yeah.
Because there's so much time in between, and the director is looking and cutting to dailies, and so you don't want to compromise that. So I think it's really, it's as close as you can get the look of the film on set and in dailies is really important.
Right. And there's one question about there's a lot of use of mirrors for the half of it. There's a lot of use of mirrors, glass, and reflection to create drama in scenes. So, can you speak about that a little and how you inculcated that into the entire narrative?
Yeah, so reflection definitely plays into the kind of the half, like finding your soulmate, half of you kind of idea, that's established in the very beginning of the film. So Alice and I talked a lot about incorporating that in composition as much as possible, whether it was in reflections or in the composition itself. So there's a lot of Ellie mirroring Aster, in a lot of different shots, and then also in reflections as well. And the hot springs specifically is like very, very much tied to the whole idea of finding your other half, and reflection, and there's an image in the beginning of the film with the animation that is actually like very, very similar to that. So that kind of built upon that idea, and incorporated it wherever it felt relevant. And with Ellie and Aster, that was kind of where it was the most relevant.
Right. Also, your director, Alice, has said that, you are uncompromising in the best ways. So
Yeah.
how is, can you elaborate more on that? What is that uncompromising in the best ways? And
I think, what does she mean by that? I'm pretty passionate about projects that I take on, and I think, I will have some ideas of how to approach something, and if I feel like, honestly, I don't know. I think, yeah, I think it's just being very, very serious about approaching the visual narrative. And I think there were times where I, didn't want to move on from something, or wanted to get one other thing, and was very convincing of that. But really, our collaboration was an entirely collaborative. I mean, a lot. She had so many visual ideas. She's a very visual writer, and in prep we had we had quite a few weeks of sitting down and shot listing and storyboarding, and we just bounced ideas off each other and came up with this like connective visual arc together. But she had so many ideas already that were just so strong. So it was just kind of building upon those. And yeah, I don't know exactly know what she means by that. I think it's just that I will stand up for an idea if I really believe in it.
Right.
And you know, I'm first to, you know, if she proves me wrong, and she certainly did on occasions, but if they're, you know, I won't back down that easily on something if I feel very confident about it. So
Right.
maybe that's partially what she meant.
Yeah, I think that's something which the directors do like. Somebody having that uncompromising uh, mindset, but at the same time, sort of not, uh, sort of drawing that line, like where it is uncompromising and where it is, when you kind of have to back off a bit.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I think,
and I always keep story in mind with that as well.
right.
It's never for visual purposes, like strictly visual purposes, or like the lighting has to be perfect or something like that. I'm super sensitive to performance and when the environment really needs to cater to that over something else, and I will, you know, I won't like hold on to something if there are other elements that are more important, I guess. Um,
Right.
but if I feel strongly about it for story, I will stick up for it
Yeah.
until the end.
I think that's a great quality to have, and I think in most of our collaborations, that's what we are looking for. Either it's between a director and a cinematographer or any other person that we are working with, that as much as possible, people should just be giving their best and not let it go easily. Because sometimes the best of the results can also come from how much you push for it. I mean, it does sometimes happen. I Before I finish the session, I wanted to understand from you that when you started working somewhere in 2008, and from then on to now, as a woman cinematographer, what are the changes that you have noticed over these years?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is coming from, you know, I haven't worked on really big sets, and I know the challenges are a little bit different once, you know, it gets much bigger, and studios, and so my experience again is coming from the indie world, and I've found that it's incredibly supportive, um, and I think, I mean, in the beginning, you know, like 2008, I was still in school, um, and I mean, it's gotten more and more supportive over the years, definitely, and I think there was a change kind of around, kind of when I was starting to DP, of a lot of interest in women cinematographers, and specific projects to that, and those just kind of popping up more and more. Um, but overall, I've just found it to be surprisingly very supportive. Like, um, yeah.
And what are your hopes from the future?
Um, what are my hopes? Uh, one that, we get past what's going on right now in a way that's, that we learn from, and hopefully cinema can help with that in some way. Not that I think that that narrative needs to change, but, I hope that there's some influence from just everything that's going on in the world right now that finds its way into cinema, and just starts spreading the right messages. I loved working with Alice because I think her ideas were really kind of pushing the minds to think about, and pushing it maybe more for companies like Netflix to distribute films that challenge the narrative. So just more films that challenge the narrative that way, and ask more questions, and yeah, I would just like to see that happen more.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that was summing it up wonderfully well. And thank you so much for joining us so early in the morning. And we hope to see many great projects from you in the future.